I just saw a couple of people disappear into thin air.
Do you want to spend your Saturdays in a post-apocalyptic wasteland? Well, if we're talking about watching a half-hour television series, then sure. But if we're talking about attending my company's annual picnic again, then absolutely not.
Then pollution and waste began to take their toll. Civilization fell into ruin.
But as it happens, we are talking about a television series, one that's set in the future with 3 young scientists in activewear driving around in an RV helping people in Ark II.
We're scientists, Mr. Poole, and besides, this is the 25th century.
Ark II was a live-action Saturday morning adventure series about a trio of scientists and their chimpanzee companion who manned a tricked-out RV. Their mission? To use science to help rebuild the world after catastrophic pollution and waste had destroyed it.
They're dying! That is regrettable.
The 15 half-hour episodes made by Filmation were broadcast by CBS in 1976 and rerun several times over the next few years.
How can you be so sure, Adam?
Brains!
It's a kids show, and as such there's an educational component or a moral to the story, rather like an Aesop's fable, but one where Aesop had access to a pretty sick RV.
I hope that then they will remember the kindness they found and not the cruelty.
Also, the basic premise of a world after the collapse of society is just a bit dark for a Saturday morning kids show, so any talk of billions of deaths is conspicuous by its absence. While the series may gloss over the end of the world, my Ark II fanfiction can get very dark very quickly.
Say hello to your sister, Gideon.
By the 25th century, small communities have formed throughout the land, living an agrarian existence and many living at subsistence level. Scientists who have survived the catastrophe had pooled their resources to build Ark II, a mobile storehouse of scientific knowledge, crewed by some highly trained young people dressed like they've just won a figure skating bronze medal at the Winter Olympics.
Our mission is to help them improve the quality of their lives in any way we can.
The crew's mission is to use science to help the various communities despite the potential dangers to themselves.
Are fully aware of the dangers we face as we venture into unknown, maybe even hostile areas.
In fact, Jonah's narration at the start of each episode does sound like he's signing a waiver form indemnifying headquarters against any injury or death suffered by Jonah and his crew. They'll roam the countryside on various missions, or will stumble upon a situation requiring their involvement. Many of the threats they'll deal with will often be as a result of misunderstandings or superstitions.
Are you mad that you treat him as though he is human?
And yes, episodes will end with a journal entry talking about what the lesson was.
Young and old are important in our society.
It's not necessarily the worst idea to teach kids about right and wrong, about cooperation, and about making friends rather than making enemies.
Our village welcomes you.
And of course, perhaps more adults could use a reminder.
It's made me think that perhaps I was wrong about machines.
Future soap actor Terry Lester played the leader of the group, Jonah.
If we could hook up the X-32 antenna with a red laser, we might be able to polarize that field and bring those people back.
Jean Marie Hon was medical specialist Ruth.
We'll have to blast through with the laser beam then.
And child actor Jose Flores was young Samuel.
Give him a message for me.
What's that?
Help! Over and out.
For all three, it was either one of their earliest or even their first acting gigs.
Look at the monitor!
Though of the three, Terry Lester would stick with acting the longest.
And yet now you ask for my help to defeat this Voyager.
He also starred in the 1985 movie Blade in Hong Kong, which also featured Jean Marie Hon.
We learned something too.
Also in the group was a talking chimpanzee, Adam, played by Moochie and voiced by Lou Scheimer.
Where's Ruth?
She hurt. I come for help.
As far as actual character traits or backstory, there is not an awful lot. Actually, there's next to none. We just have a hero guy who's got a beard and a jump pack, a young woman, a genius kid, and a chimp sidekick whose main function was comic relief.
Nobody's perfect.
Chimpanzees in captivity tend to have a rather dirty sense of humor, so if you ever find yourself babysitting a chimpanzee and it indicates that it wants to play catch with you, decline politely. Ark II, being a mobile lab, was full of all manner of scientific gear, as well as a kitchen nook and a dining area. And of course, whoever thought that Adam should cook clearly hadn't yet fallen for the let's play catch routine.
Always complain.
Ark II had an observation bubble, various scanners, and could also generate defensive force fields and fire energy beams. Ark II also housed a second smaller vehicle, the Roamer. The crew would take turns driving the vehicles, but only Jonah was allowed to use the jet jumper, don't touch the jet jumper. In fact, don't even look at the jet jumper. Only Jonah is insured to use the jet jumper.
I'll use the jet jumper.
So Samuel and Ruth and sometimes even Adam could drive the Ark or the Roma without issue, but the sullen silence and piercing glare from Jonah whenever somebody asked for a go on the jet jumper said more than words ever could.
He wanted to keep it all for himself.
So when it comes to the jet jumper, Jonah just wasn't a sharer.
I'm gonna need your help.
Oh?
Throughout the lands there are various small communities and villages, as well as bands of barbarians and scavengers.
I know you dressed up donkey!
The Ark crew might encounter a village that has some strict rule that ends up with more and more people being cast out. Jonah and company would help the community overcome its long-held traditions and demonstrate how working together was the way forward. Caring for each other, sharing with each other.
Because you didn't share.
Of course, the sharing bit didn't extend to Jonah's jet jumper. Hands off, peasants.
And no friends to share it with.
One community would save a fortune on old-aged care just by getting rid of the old-aged, which does seem like a plan when you're a young sociopath, but doesn't seem like such a great idea when you get to the stage in life where you find yourself on mailing lists for brochures for retirement communities in Florida.
Well, I prefer to be dull-witted.
One community wants to get rid of somebody they see as a wild boy who, as it turns out, was just trying to save them from a deadly cave. One community used a lottery system to dole out its limited food supply. The Ark II crew will rock up and help these groups loosen up somewhat.
I wish only that you would open your heart and your mind to the world.
Often leftover technology would drive the plots. A printing press, a tank, leftover chemicals, nerve agents, or unexploded bombs.
If this gas were released, it would kill everyone who was exposed to it.
One group used much of their food supply to make fuel for motorbikes rather than first feeding their people.
This is ridiculous!
While a kids show from the period had limits on the sorts of violence that could be portrayed, Ark II was of course an adventure series, so any idea of somebody being in mortal peril was handled in a way where maybe there's some concern or even just a teeny bit of anxiety, but nobody's updating their will while waiting for rescue. Some threats to harmony come from antagonistic scavenger groups, who may be attacking peaceful settlements, or various villains setting themselves up as despots.
Our mission is to investigate this unusual society.
One fly in the tyrannical ointment, Ark II, so often the crew of Ark II will have to be dealt with.
You blind barbarian! You're beginning to irritate me!
The various settlements we see do tend to blur into one another as they are almost exactly the same with very minor differences. Sometimes they need saving from themselves, and at other times they need help to free themselves from a malicious influence. The Baron used magic and illusions to rule one group through fear. Another group rejected technology, but then they've also found a working tank. One group has dissidents who have a working printing press. 3 missing young children with psychic powers have been captured by the warlord Brack. Ruth ends up in a parallel dimension and has to be retrieved.
Let's just say I'm a passing stranger.
Samuel built a robot, Alpha 1 or Alfie, which at first made a lot of mistakes, and Jonah just wants it off the Ark. But Alfie will learn and eventually sacrifice itself to seal a volcanic rift that saves a community.
Adios, amigo.
Of course, Jonah doesn't acknowledge how much of a prick he was to the robot in his narration at the end of the episode. Jonah is just like that.
Farewell, my friends.
There'll never be another one like you, Alfie.
The robot, of course, was Robbie the robot from Forbidden Planet.
What happened?
Pollution, Mr. Poole, overpopulation, wars.
Another episode shows 2 men from the 20th century being revived, and the pair will pick up exactly where they left off, manufacturing chemicals that proved poisonous.
How safe are the chemicals involved?
Oh, save us baby powder, girlie.
Gee, Thurston Howell's business ethics are sure something to behold.
Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle.
Never. Too ugly.
The final episode featured Ruth and Adam suddenly aging thanks to an enclave of immortals whose energy source prevented them from aging, but at the cost of polluting the surrounding area. In one of the few times that the characters were actually allowed to show much emotion. Final showdown where Jonah threatens to set off Ark II's self-destruct was one of the more dramatic moments in the series.
But if those engines blow, we're all doomed!
Where this cool and dramatic ending was offset by a poorly built garden gazebo collapsing.
By heaven, Don Quixote, thee art bad yourself.
Even with many of the episodes blurring into one another, the one I most enjoyed was Omega, about a community that was ruled by a computer that had the power to control people's minds. And it's up to Jonah to work out a puzzle needed to reset the computer. It's just a very interesting science fiction idea that felt a little more involved than some rather shallow stories about somebody calling themselves Robin Hood, whose crew dressed like the Merry Men, and who talk like they once drove through Nottingham and picked up the accent at a Shell service station.
Eat hearty, mother, and remember, safe below.
There are generally three types of actors appearing in this series. Actual, proper character actors who seem happy to take on a quick 2-day job during the summer break when other programs were on hiatus. There were people putting in comedic performances such as Jim Backus or Jonathan Harris. And then there's everyone else who honestly was probably just very happy that they'd gotten a gig on television. One of those actors in a very early role was Helen Hunt.
Omega's our leader. He can do anything. I'll take you to him.
Filmation was mainly known for its prodigious output of animated fare for Saturday mornings, but in the mid-70s they had branched out and added a few live-action series to the catalogue. Superhero series Shazam and Secrets of Isis and the sitcom The Ghostbusters had already made appearances in the schedules. Ark II would be their first adventure series to have a science fiction theme, where it would be later followed by Space Academy and Jason of Star Command. Whereas Shazam and Isis would end episodes with the main character directly addressing the camera to hammer home the episode's moral lesson, Ark II's lessons were often recapped by Jonah as a log entry in a way that feels slightly less like a lecture from your grandmother after you forgot to take off your shoes while visiting her. I mean, she just had the carpets cleaned 3 years ago. Like other Filmation live-action series, Ark II was filmed on 16mm film, though unlike some of the earlier Filmation series, Ark II would use all manner of optical effects for force fields and energy beams.
Oh, man.
Series creator Martin Roth was a television writer in the 60s and 70s, where he'd written for dozens of series. Of course, his highest profile gig was as a prolific writer on The Dukes of Hazzard.
Boom.
Dick Rosenblum produced the series as one of 3 gigs for Filmation and would later go on to produce many primetime series and telemovies.
Their life is harsh and they are often cruel to each other.
Most of the series was shot on location, mainly at the Paramount Ranch during one summer, with crews working until the sun went down. Any sets on locations left over from previous productions were used wherever possible, including sets used by Planet of the Apes on the nearby Fox Ranch, all of which is now Malibu Creek State Park.
Smack in the middle of nowhere. So far all we've seen is miles and miles of miles and miles.
Like those other live-action Filmation series, Ark II was a low-budget affair, where episodes were dashed out in less time than it takes giant mutated ants to find a broken-down ice cream truck.
That could take me days.
Each episode of Ark II would take around 3 days to film, with each setup expected to be captured in just 1 or 2 takes, which would probably explain why the acting can sometimes be just okay, when the actors have to get their lines out as quickly as possible.
We can't afford any complications.
Of course, this fantastic idea only works well if you don't have a trained chimp in many scenes. Ark II has a trained chimp in many scenes, who, despite being a well-trained chimp, was still a chimpanzee. And a chimpanzee who was also a bit of a biter. I used to work with a chimpanzee who was once hired to fill in for my office nemesis, and while the temp chimp was at least as competent, I think everybody else got sick of the fruit basket in the break room always being empty by 10 a.m.
Get away from that child!
Wait, you misunderstand.
The only major scenes shot in the studio were the scenes set inside the Ark. The actual exterior of the Ark was a custom body built on an old truck chassis. Some footage showing the Ark II hustling along at some speed was shot on a dry bed used for titles and stock footage, but for footage shot for the episodes, it's often quite slow and lumbering with suspension bobbing up and down like a shark's lunch. The Roma was a smaller, more nimble vehicle that the crew would use when they wanted to go a bit faster, though it was another vehicle with a custom body, this time placed over a Volkswagen Thing. Both were built by Brubaker Group, where the Ark is often confused by some as being the vehicle from the 1977 film Damnation Alley, but that was a different design built by a different shop. Then there was the Jet Jumper, a development of the Bell rocket belt looked after by Nelson Tyler. Terry Lester was often shown putting on a prop or mocked up in flight, while a double actually flew the Jet Jumper in long shots, where every flight sequence used in the series was shot in a single day. On board Ark II, the Jet Jumper was stored behind a padlocked door with a sign saying, "Jonah's stuff, keep out."
Sure, Jonah.
Filmation live-action series were generally run on a shoestring by executive producers Lou Scheimer and Norm Prescott. Yes, they of the weird rotating credit. To stretch the budget, the pair would often pull double duty. Any voiceovers were generally performed by Lou Scheimer, who in Ark II narrates the intro. He voiced Adam, as well as any number of random characters in Longshot. Norm Prescott's second gig was as musical composer, along with Ray Ellis, both of whom are credited using a pseudonym. I often give a fake name to car services when I'm being picked up at airports. At LAX, I'm Derek Churro. At Charles de Gaulle, I'm Benoit Croissant. And at Heathrow Airport, I'm Richard Yorkshire Pudding.
You're a genius.
Compared to Filmation's other live-action series, Ark II seems to have fallen into a sweet spot in terms of the show's premise matching the almost negligible budget. Ark II is cheesy, but doesn't feel so obviously cheap as some of the other Filmation series, where the biggest production design expense was for the 2 custom vehicles.
You're one heck of a guy.
That goes double for me, Jonah.
Me too.
And the costumes, where the main cast are dressed in what seems like leftover uniforms from the failed fast food chain Quaalude Burger, where if you can finish a burger without falling asleep, they will direct you to the nearest rehab facility. Ark II was a show that I do vaguely recall, probably from local screenings from the very, very early 80s, where I lived, it was shown around midday on a Saturday, around the time the shops closed. But those memories are basically of the fact that they had a truck and a jetpack, and that was pretty much it. So it's a vague recollection that's not enough for me to proclaim Ark II as some forgotten gem.
What do you say to that?
It's a kid show from an era where you could do very little in a live-action show aimed at kids, yet watching Ark II now, it has held up better than, say, Shazam, which, while was also fun, did seem more than a little patronising, which is what they also said about my book, Wings for Dummies.
We can make the same mistakes over and over again, or we can learn and we can grow.
Ark II does have a little bit more of an adventure feel. It still has very positive messages, but integrated well into the story and much less clumsily than those earlier Filmation shows, and occasionally just managed to put out a few fun science fiction concepts in amongst the cornier plot lines.
He's no lady, Mr. Quixote. He's Adam, he's a chimp.
It's also very hard to find these days, since outside of Shazam, Filmation's live-action catalogue has not been cared for all that well, meaning the only way I could watch this series was from an out-of-print DVD. So while this show has about as much depth as a sheet of paper, has some dodgy acting and some very superficial characters, it was also a little bit of fun, just very enjoyable despite how cheesy it is.
Tell us, Adam, what's the key to your success?
Brains.
Though, of course, it's very easy to forget the show's flaws, when all you can remember are the cool vehicles. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
You can have everything in the world, but without anybody to share it with, you have nothing.